Hello, everyone. I'm going to tell you a story today about a little girl named BoopyLou. And it's a Good Friday story. And it takes place in a springtime that's a lot like the one we're having out there right now in terms of the weather. Sunny skies, birds singing, and it made you want to go outside. But unlike this particular spring, people could go outside in the spring that I'm telling the story about. You could stand closer than 2 meters apart. You could go to school. Well, in this case, BoopyLou's class was standing together outside, and they were at school. Or more particularly, they were in the schoolyard. And BoopyLou's favorite teacher, whose name was Mrs. Moomfuzzle, was teaching the class about Mrs. Moomfuzzle's favorite thing in the world, which was a giant oak tree in the corner of the schoolyard. And Mrs. Moomfuzzle was going on and on about how much she loved this old, gnarly, rugged oak tree and how special it was. And children were going along with it, except for one child. And Mrs. Moomfuzzle stopped because she realized BoopyLou was not paying attention to her. BoopyLou was standing by herself and looking down at the ground, and she did not look happy. So Mrs. Moomfuzzle said, BoopyLou, what's wrong? And BoopyLou said, Mrs. Moomfuzzle, I think something's wrong with the tree. And Mrs. Moomfuzzle said, why do you say that, BoopyLou? I think it's gonna die. And she went on like that for a while. But Mrs. Moomfuzzle said, but BoopyLou, it's a healthy tree. Look at it. It's doing very, very well. BoopyLou reached down to the ground and she picked something up off the ground that looked like this. And BoopyLou said, do you see that? That's sickness. I think that might mean the tree is gonna die. And Mrs. Moomfuzzle said, oh, BoopyLou, oh, that's not a bad thing. That is a gall. And BoopyLou said, that doesn't sound like a good thing. And Mrs. Moomfuzzle said, oh, well, what you need to know, BoopyLou, is that a gall comes from a wasp. Still doesn't sound like a good thing. But the wasp stings the tree. Not sounding good. And the sting leaves poison in the branch. Mrs. Moomfuzzle, you're not doing a good job of selling me on this. Wait. And when that poison comes, the tree attacks it. Okay, I know it's still just, and when it attacks it, it builds up wood and wood and wood around it, and eventually it also builds bark, and that's what forms this thing that's called a gall. Mrs. Moomfuzzle, all of those are bad things. How can you say that this is a good thing? Well, BoopyLou, what I didn't tell you is what happens next. Do you see this little hole here? Yeah. Well, out of that hole, eventually a bunch of baby wasps come out. Because what that wasp was doing when it stung the tree was it was making a place for it to lay its eggs and for the baby wasps to be protected in their eggs. And so eventually, when they came out, they could be safe and they could be protected. Now, isn't that a good thing? Oh, Mrs. Moomfuzzle, there's all that bad stuff. But BoopyLou, there's one more thing. But I need a couple of days before I can show it to you. Can you wait just a couple of days, BoopyLou? And BoopyLou said, okay, I can wait a couple of days. So sure enough, a couple of days later into class, Mrs. Moomfuzzle brought a couple of things. And she said, BoopyLou, you remember the gall that I showed you before? Well, I found a few more galls, and they are in this jar. And she held up a jar that was full of brown powder. She said, I ground up the galls, and they're in this little jar. And she put it on the desk. And then she pulled out a nail a rusty old nail. And she said, "Do you see this, BoopyLou? Aha. We're going to put this rusty nail into vinegar." And she had a little jar of vinegar, and the rust started coming off it. And she held up another jar and she said, "I did this a couple days ago with another nail. And then I have this gall powder. And do you know what I'm going to do now?" And she took the jar of rusty nail liquid, and she took the jar of gall powder, and she poured the powder into the liquid. Do you know what happened? It went from being a light brown color, kind of like what you see here, to a shocking blue-black color almost instantly. And BoopyLou went, "Whoa!" And Mrs. Moomfuzzle said, "Aha, do you know what this is? This is ink, BoopyLou. And do you know what you can do with this ink, BoopyLou?" BoopyLou said, "Write stuff?" "Yes, BoopyLou. You can write stuff or you can draw stuff." And Leonardo da Vinci drew all of his wonderful drawings, all of his masterworks using ink exactly like this, made of this exact same stuff. And Shakespeare wrote all of his plays, and constitutions and Magna Cartas were written using this kind of ink. And do you know what else? The Bible was written with this kind of ink on scrolls and buried in clay pots in a cave to preserve it and to save it for us today. And look, BoopyLou, here's what I can do. And Mrs. Moomfuzzle took a pen and she dipped it into the ink, and on a piece of paper she wrote the word love. And she said, "Now, BoopyLou, do you think it's a good thing now? How about you? Do you think that a good thing like love can come out of things that are horrible and wrong and seem so poisonous and painful?" It can. For example, the day we're celebrating today, Good Friday, if you read the story, there's very few good things that happened. There was pain. There was wounding. There was even iron nails and vinegar and another thing called gall, a bitter substance, like what came out of those oak things. And all of those things together, they don't look good when they happen, but good things can come out of them. And likewise, when you have something that looks like a wound, is that something that can bring healing? When you have something that looks like a tomb, is that something that can burst forth with brand new life? Doesn't seem possible, but it happens, and it happened. And so on this day, I wish the best for all of you. And I know that this is a very dark and painful time, but I hope that you can all find the good in Good Friday and look forward to the Easter that is coming and the new life that is promised to all of us. Blessings to all of you, and I hope to see you back at Parkdale soon.